Hi, everybody. I'm Miles Clark. I'm the aforementioned dishes doing husband. We are so excited to bring to Ann Arbor Jason Kirk, who wrote a spectacular novel. I hope some of you have had a chance to read it, and those of you who haven't yet, I hope you'll take the time after this event. It's a really wonderful story about a community of young people caring for each other in a time and place in their life when they desperately need that care. And so with no further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel, Jason Kirk. We've got Jane Coaston here tonight. She's a New York Times contributor and CNN contributor. And we've got Ace Anbender, formerly of MGO Blog. Yeah.
Are both these mics on?
Oh, seriously, do you have both? That's amazing. Hello. Is this on?
On.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry you guys missed the can opening. Let's see, so we have a program. I'll pull it up on my phone.
I believe you are going to make some remarks.
I'm going to make some introductory remarks. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to Reverend Ann and Miles Clark for incredible hospitality this weekend, and for the numerous congregations who share this building for letting us be in their space. And yeah, so there's just big thank yous all around to everyone. We're here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, as you know, and the University of Michigan, I believe, is a fairly integral institution in this town, as I understand. How many of you are familiar with a little podcast by the name of the Shutdown Fullcast? Okay. It's about what I figured. So our podcast, I'm a co-host of it. Jane's been on. I'm not sure if Ace has been on, but Ace should have been on at some point. Ace has been in our universe for a decade plus. Every year, two of my co-hosts in particular, Holly Anderson and Spencer Hall, coordinate a charity drive for a refugee resettlement charity in Georgia, where Holly, Spencer, and I live, called New American Pathways. And each year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This year, we have raised over $1 million for...
And most importantly to everyone here, Michigan raised the most money.
Again.
And all of our rivals raised less money.
Possibly combined?
Yeah, like it was a sad performance by everyone who isn't us.
Episcopalians say something before we collect the offering. We say, make good your vows to the Most High, which is like pretty metal for the Episcopal Church. And I saw that interception get called back. I know all y'all came up with it. Good job.
Yeah.
So yeah, wanted to mention that because yes, Michigan, you won. Yes, yet again, best at football, best at debate, best at charity. We get it. Best at knowing things about World War I. Okay, fine. And yeah, so if there are any people in here who, like me, haven't been to church on purpose in a very long time, just know that this community has, in fact, proven its bona fides as people who are doing the things you're supposed to do, regardless of where we all are on the whole believing things part, all right? Doing things is the most important thing, and this community has done things, all right? So yeah, I think those are my introductory remarks.
Okay.
Let me, this is going to be a very, very smooth, very smooth, incredibly professional outfit. Miles, did you have a question for us?
Yeah, so I love this book. All right, so in the book, a lot of very significant, life-changing things in the, the various paths that these young people are on take place in some pretty kind of familiar youth group settings. A lot of it happens at a Pizza Hut. A lot of it happens in someone's mom's basement where they're playing video games. One of my personal favorites is that a really important moment happens on a day where two young people get serially kicked out of pretty much all the stores in the mall. And so my question for the panel is this. What is the dumbest location that something truly profound has happened in your life? Where have you grown the most in the stupidest place?
One thing I forgot to ask, how many have already read the book? Look at this, look at this.
Michigan does the reading.
Yep.
The Michigan answer right here. This is Big Ten academics. Did either of you want to go first?
Well, I can start. So there are a lot of realizations I have had in Ann Arbor, in various locations, in a tree planter on South University. We don't need to go into too many details about why I was or wasn't in a tree planter. But I think one of my major realizations, and I think Jason might see something of himself in this, took place at a Waffle House in Newport, Kentucky. Because when you are in high school and you believe in the land of dreams and magic, you believe that if you just take someone who is drunk to Waffle House, they will stop being drunk and then they can drive you home. Now, is that true? No. But in that Waffle House, as anyone who's ever been to a Waffle House, and let's keep in mind this is also a Waffle House at 2:45 in the morning, Jesus is in that place because everyone is in that place. And in this fascinating way, it was a place in which there were cops, and on the other side, there were sex workers and people who I believe to be their pimps all haggling over their money. There were people who were clearly not sober. There were people who were clearly coming from a sober event because they were all wearing like matching shirts about getting sober. And all of them had come together in this Waffle House in fellowship and love of not very good chocolate chip waffles. They aren't good. And that was a place where I was like, oh, people uniting in this place for Lord knows why, coming from as many different walks of life as possible, including me, all finding space in this place. I found a real sense of kinship in, again, a Waffle House.
I think that's very valid and relatable, and I think the thing it makes me think of is the thing a lot of people say about a Catholic church, that if you go anywhere, it's the same experience like a McDonald's, which I have felt that at Waffle House, though. Like any Waffle House you go to, it's not the same. It's incredibly different, but like the same spirit is there.
Also, there's usually like one waitress who's worked there since the dawn of time. She will be there until the end of time. She is there when the days are over. Like, she's awesome.
The Alpha and Omegatress.
I could go next, or you.
I can do it. I have a very Ann Arbor one. For those who don't know, I grew up here, so I'm a living stereotype. And before we all got driver's licenses, the thing that we would do for fun would be to go to the original Borders downtown, which sadly no longer exists, and raise hell. And under the guise of looking for CDs back when you would pay for those. And a few of us went in there, and we had already tabletopped somebody in the CD section. If you don't know what that is when one friend gets down on their knees behind somebody, and then you tip that person over them. It's great. It makes a lot of noise, rattles the CDs. It's very fun when you're in middle school. And I made the mistake of saying I had to go to the bathroom, and a friend thought it would be a brilliant idea to catch me on the way out with a ball of soaking paper towels. Standard. The problem was he missed me coming out and caught the next guy. And we left very swiftly after that before we could get officially kicked out. But it was one of those moments where, like, you can only have this when you're like in middle school or early high school of like, oh, other people exist. And yeah, we had that in the downtown borders. May it rest in peace.
But yeah, that moment when you realize, like, this all isn't just like some sort of a video game in which I am the protagonist. But then again, there are people who don't learn that for a long time. So so I'm glad you had that moment to avoid learning it much later.
We tried.
So for those of you who don't know about the podcast I just mentioned, I'm going to declare it as one of the dumbest podcasts. So one of my epiphanies occurred while on it. And a lot of you have heard this story. So about 10 years ago, on that podcast, I told the story of a very insane thing that happened long ago when I was a young, hardcore evangelical kid in Metro Atlanta, where, Wednesday night at church, a few men stormed into the room, waving rifles, end times theater threatening us, deny Christ or we'll kill you. Haha, it was all a skit. Anyway, I told that story, and it started getting reactions. On the one hand, like, what the hell, and on the other, these little pockets of like, hey, yeah, that happened to me too. Something even weirder happened to me too, and like that sort of just kept building and building and building for a long time until I told Emily, my wife, who's here in the looks like the third row, and my co-host on my other podcast, Vacation Bible School, on which Jane has also appeared. Mm-hmm. Ace, we really got to catch you up on that. But yeah, and telling Emily was like the final straw. The look on her face was like, I should probably start writing a novel, and voila, there it is. And since, writing this thing it was the only therapy I've ever done, but it was pretty effective. So, the dumbest podcast that we try to make the dumbest podcast we possibly can, but unfortunately, it just keeps like changing our lives for the better, which is,
and other people's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just can't help it. I don't know. The other one is how Emily and I met was a number of years ago. Not that many, but a number of years ago, when we were kind of still children. We met on the message board of a Christian. I don't even know what genre they are. Hard rock. They're a Christian hard rock band. They're kind of the knockoff Deftones of that world. And I was a fan at the time. I was on their message board, and Emily went to their show in Kansas City, where the singer had lost his wallet and called the show off early, and it was a whole big thing. So she joined the message board. She wasn't a huge fan. She joined just to find out what happened to the singer's wallet. Where did it end up? Next thing you know, we're married. Because we were church kids, right? If you know, you know. Fast forward to last September in Birmingham, Alabama, at a music festival. We go up to the lead singer of this band. We tell him this story, and he says, "Oh yeah, I didn't actually lose my wallet. I was having a really bad day." And he said, "I've never told that to anyone, but we're the only people who would have cared. So there you go."
I think I have many favorite things about this book, which also made me feel awful, not because of the book being awful, but because being an evangelical teen in the late 1990s, early 2000s was terrible. It just was. One, I am glad that everyone got the, we've got Nine Inch Nails at home treatment of any band. However, I never did find evangelical Nine Inch Nails.
Skillet.
No.
Midpoint Skillet.
No.
So I'm not saying they're as good as Nine Inch Nails. So you're gonna go early 90s. You're gonna go Clank is gonna be your Nine Inch Nails. Again, I'm not saying they're good. Around Y2K, you're gonna go Skillet. Now, some of you who have heard the music of Skillet, you're thinking, no, they don't sound anything like Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails was all things to all people, as the Apostle Paul preached. By which I mean, whichever genre is most popular, they will chase it in the name of Christofascism.
Yeah. So, I always felt really bad for POD for the number of times people were like, well, they're Rage Against the Machine. And then I'm like, poor POD just being, no,
That's not what they were going for.
No, that wasn't what they were going for, but that's what they were sold as. But I think my first question for you about the book, there are so many great lines in this book that are just like random asides, like the cross where Romans assassinated Jesus because finger banging would undoubtedly happen at Beach Fest 2002. Or
we just said finger banging in a church.
Or even just like little things that Isaac, our main character, is clearly realizing of like men had constantly explained women to me, but nobody had ever told me girls want things. So in the process of writing this book, how was it to go back to these specific, it's not just about being raised evangelical or being an evangelical. It's about being evangelical in this particular time. You're being an evangelical during 9/11, being an evangelical during the height of purity culture. What was it like to examine those moments and then try to parse them out to an audience that maybe didn't have those times?
It was a lot of fun. In a way. So yeah, it was a lot of just sort of scattering my memories onto the page and then like looking at them and thinking like, okay, what here is universal among other people who had a religious background like mine? What here is universal among people who had like no religious background at all? And then like, a lot of researching and reading other books and podcasts and so forth by people who have either left that world behind or didn't, because there's stuff to learn from either of those. So like when I think back on like this exact point, this like 9/11 era, the apex of evangelical pop culture, like we're talking about the era in which POD is #1 on TRL, the era in which like people have heard of DC Talk and Switchfoot and Amy Grant and Kirk Franklin.
Because we were meant to live for so much more.
I feel a song coming on. Ace, you got can you beatbox at least? But yeah, it was. So you had that. You had like the project of evangelicalism, which is like Catholics make art for Catholics. Evangelicals make art with the intention of everyone will buy this, and it was working. And you had 9/11, and you had, like you said, purity culture becoming this thing where it wasn't just about like kids don't have sex before marriage. It was like, if you wait, it'll be so hot. Like it was like the cringiest lines in there that any youth pastor says to any of the kids, transcribed. All right, all of that is like some of the most universal stuff within this world. So yeah, just sort of like laying it all out there, seeing what we have, and then like assigning like this goes with this character, this goes with that character, and then the moments where that felt like little eurekas, where it's like, okay, this is a snappy way to sum this up. Like honestly, all of those were the product of like whittling down like 10 pages to a sentence. I did that just over and over and over and over. Emily can attest. I had many like 12-hour writing days that ended up with like, all right, I have a clause. This is a keeper. But yeah, I think the main thing really that I learned is there is value in unearthing things about yourself and about others. Like there's this whole thing, especially online, of like you can't like think about what you were like when you were young or whatever. And I've seen a lot of it. Like there's a new Taylor Swift album, so it's like, oh my God, she still talks like she's 18 or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, once you reach a certain age, you realize like I'm kind of just 18 forever, so who cares? Like once you're out of your 20s, you stop caring about what age anyone thinks you are. So
you also become unable to tell what age anyone else is.
Right.
Everyone's like, you're a baby or you're a grandma, and those are the two. That's it.
And then once you reach a certain age, you forget how old you are. Someone asked me the other day, I was like, hang on, do you really want to know? I'll do the math. Yeah. It's a long-winded answer.
So I am like, I think I probably had the like most polar opposite religious upbringing to you as humanly possible. I went to, for people who are familiar, the Jewish Cultural Society, which is a secular humanist Sunday school within the Jewish Community Center. My dad, who was the one who picked the place for us, called it Judaism without God, and My parents met in a large group awareness training called EST. So I come from a very different background from Jason and really did not anticipate being able to relate to this book as directly as I did. Including there's some stuff to work out with my dad because I related to Josiah a lot. But I think, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit in your answer to Jane's question, but were you surprised with how universally relatable so much of the book was, given how different an experience that was from what most people experience?
So when I set out to write it, like the main two objectives were A, I need to make people who grew up in or around this world feel seen and represented. Because, like, I mean, part of the reason to take on a project like this is I'd never seen myself in a novel other than Left Behind YA. You want to talk about a nightmare is looking in Left Behind YA and thinking like, oh, these kids, yeah, that's me. The kid who's left behind to be like eaten by the Antichrist or whatever. So, like, on the one hand, we need, like, yes, the chapter 1 title is indeed a Switchfoot reference. I need from the get-go, if you were there, I see that hand. The other thing is, I need folks who were not there, I need you on board really, really quickly, or else you're going to think, like, this is for people who aren't me. So, like, you know, we start with scene 1 is someone at a summer camp has a crush on a camp counselor. The most relatable thing in the world. And then I hit you with the curveball. He thinks he's a horrible person because of it, right? But how much of a curveball is that really? Because we all have doubt and shame and fear and guilt and blah, blah, blah. We all have part of our brain that just hates us, right? And so a lot of work went into, I need this to do both things at once, which there goes another 12-hour days, another block of them. The reaction that I've gotten since people have read it has been really, really awesome, like better than I hoped in a lot of ways. Like the things I hear from a lot of readers are basically like, oh, now I get why the kids in my high school cafeteria were so weird. Because it wasn't that we were trying to save your soul because we thought you were bad. We were trying to save your soul because we thought we were bad if we couldn't. Like, and it's those little twists and those little hooks that I think sort of reveal that, like, yeah, we were weird humans. We were humans, you know. Nobody controls the systems they're born into. Everyone is born into systems of indoctrination. Everyone. And hearing from like people who grew up in high control religion and who are able to say like, I think I'm able to forgive myself now. That's like, man, that's heavy, you know? Because like, I think back on how obnoxious and judgmental I was as a freaking 9th grader. And I look at that kid and I'm like, listen, buddy, you were doing the best you could. It's okay, right? So yeah, the other thing is I tried to treat it, like I took lessons from fantasy novels. So all of chapter 2 is just world building. Like chapter 2 is Isaac walking you through a planet you might not have been to. And saying like, on this day we do this. It's all this insane stuff, and I'm gonna make some snappy jokes about it, and we're gonna keep it moving. And like a lot of that, and someone actually my former colleague at SB Nation, Pete Volk, he commented, he was like, chapter 2, that feels like the chapter most defined by like sports journalism about wacky stuff going wrong. He's like, this feels like you explaining the NCAA. I'm like, you read my freaking mind, because that's me explaining evangelicalism, me explaining the NCAA, it's going to sound the same. It's going to sound like when an NCAA lawyer gets in front of a judge and the judge is like, are you fucking kidding me? You're telling me this is real? You know, that is me explaining high control religion. Just telling you exactly what happens. And that is the punchline.
Yeah. I think something that just to kind of jump off of that, I thought I really appreciated that for people who hadn't endured a high control religion or had put themselves in the high control religion, that was me. I did this to myself. I did not, like, my parents didn't do this. My parents are like liberation theology Catholics who are like talking about Oscar Romero and Dorothy Day and would probably be socialists if socialists weren't mean.
I love that joining evangelicalism is the most Catholic thing you've ever done.
Oh yeah. I think that for anyone also who has dealt with, I know this is a heavy topic, but I think everyone here can handle it. People who have dealt with depression and suicidal ideation, like something I really liked about the book is that voice in your head, in Isaac's head, that is, he thinks for a while, like, this is the Holy Spirit talking to him. And then it becomes like, are you Rush Limbaugh? And it's like really kind of unclear. And then I think towards the end when it stops, it eventually like slows down and stops. And I distinctly remember, like, I went to Catholic church, but I went to like a fairly liberal Catholic church. And I remember having this thought of like, and this might be the most metal thing I've ever said, but it wasn't hardcore enough for me. Like Catholicism wasn't doing it. I wanted more pain. I wanted more, like, I needed to be told I was a worse person. Like, it sounds like BDSM, but no one had fun. And and that's when I found like online evangelicalism. I found the people who were like, Catholics aren't Christians. You're a terrible person. And I'm like, yeah, tell me more about how I'm a bad person. And how the Virgin Mary is crying because maybe she's not a virgin and you pray to her because she's your idol. Like, I think that you really had this feeling of being dirty and bad, and then finding people who are willing to tell you how dirty and bad you are, and that there's really no way out to your dirty badness. And it's like this, it's this and it was interesting because there's a moment in the book in which there's a Catholic character, and she starts talking about Catholic guilt, and Isaac's like, no, I don't want to hear about Catholic guilt. So I'm curious, were you able, I mean, what was it like to talk about the pain that I think evangelicalism or a lot of religions can put on you with this idea of eternal sin, eternal damnation. You have to put on a happy face to make other people be Christian, but you can't be happy because you're the lowest form of humanity. Even saying these things, you sound insane, but then you're like, nope, that's true. It's a good thing Jesus died because otherwise I'd be in hell. Like, how were you able to draw that out and talk about that, especially in a fictional format?
Again, it was really fun. It's that. A lot of that was the stuff that I had to do the most work of digging up, because like when I started to write the project, it was like, I don't like the picture everyone has of church kids as mindless little robots, little Ned Flanders kids, or little stuck-up, hypocritical. Saved is a wonderful movie. The writer and director blurb this novel you see before you. The Mandy Moore character, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, there's always a Mandy Moore, but a lot of people think like, well, for anyone who's seen that movie, she's a snobby little church awful kid. But a lot of the pictures in pop culture is like the whole youth group is just that kid, and I started to write it because it's just like no. I knew very, very few terrible young people when I was in the church. Did you hear which word I emphasized? Then once I had that, like, oh, look at these kids who do jackass stunts in this crazy world, it was like, hang on. We got to go way, way, way deeper here. We got to uproot some stuff. It's time to finally talk about some stuff that has like been ignored for a very long time. So like getting into the shame and the guilt and all that stuff. There goes some word blocks of 12 hours. I think to me, like Western Christianity, and this is kind of a David Bentley Hart thing. Again, I talked about him earlier today. Western Christianity following into the tradition of St. Augustine. Now, there's a guy who likes feeling bad. Eastern Christianity. He's awesome. Eastern Christianity, a lot of it following more in the tradition of Gregory of Nyssa, believes in universalism. Everything ends up fine eventually, even if things suck for a while. And hell is about like cleansing and redemption, not punishment. So like two very different worldviews based on the same religion. And like Western Christianity, Catholicism, and various other kinds, we have this like, you gotta feel bad if you're feeling good. That I found a thing about John Calvin's view on the harrowing of hell the other day. Did you ever know the story of the harrowing of hell? The idea that like after the crucifixion, Jesus goes down to hell, performs a redemptive act, and then resurrects. Calvin said it's not about liberating Adam and Eve. It's about suffering more. It's like, that's everything I need to know about John Calvin. Thank you. But like, I think what sets evangelicalism apart is the toxic positivity of it, right? Because like Catholics, the sadder you look, the better you're doing. Evangelicalism, you have to feel that, but look happy, because like no one will sign up for what you're selling if you look like down in the dumps. And there's a few moments in there where like Isaac does like an impression of his pastor, just reciting these like, who wants to be chosen if the chosen look frozen, and just, oh my God, all this like frankly triggering stuff that I heard 1,000 times as a young person. So it's always interesting to me, these systems that so much of the way they're presented are about feeling bad. Like Catholicism at its core is not about feeling bad; it's about Jesus, right? Evangelicalism at its core is not about right-wing politics. At its core, it's about Jesus, right? These are just sprawling systems that have been built on top of it, and a lot of those effects are terrible. I say all that so no one can accuse me of saying Catholics are bad. Okay, great. Yes, covered it. But like, their little quirks and idiosyncrasies are really interesting to me. Like, I don't have a what is it, dog in either fight? Is that the saying?
Dog in the fight? It's fine.
Thank you.
Whatever.
I don't have a horse in either race. But so for me, like as a sort of kind of neutral outsider, it's like, well, this one is bad for this reason and this reason, this reason. This one is bad for this reason, this reason, this reason. And again, those are just about the high control systems of control, not the denominations themselves. If that makes any sense.
So, like, this has obviously been a really involved process, and I mean, you keep mentioning how fun it was. I was warned ahead. I told Jamie Howard, who was part of the Atlanta book release, that I was doing this event, and told her I was planning to wait until like a week before to start the book so that it'd be fresh in my mind. She was like, absolutely don't do that. Read it like a month ahead of time because you need to process. And she was right. The stuff that you mentioned about shame, like my dad tried to replace religion with the large group awareness training that he led. And a lot of it was a different way of making us feel bad. He told us that his love was conditional, and that was the only time he ever expressed a feeling of love towards us. There was a lot of stuff about avoidance that he would say to me and my brother for just like being children and not picking up after ourselves. And I did not want to. I never told my friends like what my dad did. I just say he was a consultant, and that was technically true, and I went with that. And so I experienced like the shame portion of it and related to that, and then got to the end of the book, and the faith and love part of it came out of nowhere for me because I'm not a religious person. I do not consider myself a particularly spiritual person, but by the end of it, I reached the end of the book and I just sat there for about an hour and thought about the phrase Jesus is love and like actually thinking about it for the first time. And it's like, other than like listening to an Aretha Franklin gospel album, it was like the closest I've ever been to feeling Christian.
We're so close.
You're getting there. So I guess I'm curious, like, did the process of writing this change how you view your faith at all?
Yes. It's really funny. When I started this, I started from a standpoint of like, all right, I'm just going to show these kids who were a lot cooler than people think. People who didn't grow up in this world. Considering the odds stacked against these kids, they're a lot cooler and funnier and weirder in like a haha way, than outsiders realize. And I had this sense that the story arc that it, and apologies for any of this, it feels spoilery, but most of you raise your hands. So I had a sense that the story arc that should be followed is Isaac starts as an all-in model citizen within this world, an honor student of evangelicalism, and it all falls apart, and he deconstructs, and then he's a different kind of Christian. That's what I thought I should do. At the same time, when I started writing this, Emily knows that 4 years ago, under no circumstances would I have said, I'm a Christian. It was like, I kind of believe in God, I guess. Like, that was my starting point. And then along the way, the funny thing happened. Me and Isaac traded places. So by the end of the book, Isaac is like, I don't care about religion. My spouse does. And whereas I'm like, I have come back around to, there are things in not this book, the other book, there was a Bible around here somewhere. There are things there are things in that book that were given to the world, by way of Ace's family, that that are of value to all of us, that cannot be taken away by men with big hats or big hair pieces and big microphones. I have a microphone, but ignore that part. That there is so much about the core ethic of the thing. And like, it's not exclusive to these religions. Like it's cliche, but I think it's completely true that every religion ends up with a version of the idea, and the interesting parts are like the tweaks to that idea, that like we are all in this together and we should act like it, right? Like that is the core value of it, and whether you say it's because of this spiritual explanation or that spiritual explanation, or we are all the breath of the Spirit, or however you arrive at that, that's the whole point, and no one can take that away. The other thing, the act of defiance, I guess, that I found was when I was growing up, we were taught you have to be all in or all out, and lots of religious traditions preach this. It's you can be good or you can be bad, or you can be good and then leave, in which case you're extra bad.
You can't be lukewarm.
Yeah, right. Yes, you can't be lukewarm. You can't be. In the LDS tradition, to make that move, you are now in the outer darkness. You are now in super turbo mega hell. And like lots of traditions do that. You are an apostate, which is worse than a heathen. So having become an apostate, I was like, wait a second. If I decide to throw all of this away because, for whatever reason, I have proved them right. I have proved the men who raised me right, that I can't keep any of it, that I'm either all in or all out. So at some point, honestly, within just the past few months, like it might have been the part at which I wrote my bio in this thing, where it's like people are going to want to know, like, where do things stand now? So I use the word lazy Christian pantheist because, like, do I believe? Can I affirm the entire Apostles' Creed? Well, if I get incredibly creative with the language, maybe, right? I don't know. I wasn't there. Like that is my explanation on what happened on Easter morning in the year 30 CE. I don't know. I know some women preached about it, and they were the first to preach about it, and hell yeah, go girls. But like other than that, I wasn't there. The point is the point, though. Like the point that Jesus said is the point is love each other like you love yourselves, not instead of yourselves, and love God, which you can take as the universe or whatever. You can woo it up all you want. Like sure I do. But like. No one can tell me that I'm either all in or all out, no matter how many times they tried to program me into that binary.
Yeah, I really liked. There are a bunch of points in which you say, Isaac says something about it physically hurt to call myself adored. The idea of loving yourself, which even reading that, like even saying those words, I'm like, blech. Like, that's not what Catholics do. No, thank you. Our saints hold the breasts that were cut off of them on plates. That's how we do. And I think that for me, that idea of like the relationship that Isaac has with himself, because he has a relationship with himself and the conversations he has that are between himself and the person who he believes to be the Holy Spirit, but might also be Rush Limbaugh, but might also just be some asshole in his head, which everyone has an asshole in their head. I thought that that's some of my
that's
favorite.
That's how the human body works.
Yeah.
It's completely true.
But I think that's some of my favorite parts of it. But also, you were thinking about your faith relationship. At this point, I am basically like, I was trying to explain to someone that, like, for me, I believe what the Catholic Church says. Like, I believe very much, like, Virgin Mary, Jesus, the whole thing, whatever. But it's like, if anyone here has had the very painful Michigan experience, and we can all be here. Were any of you waitlisted from somewhere else, like the University of Chicago? Now, it all worked out because we would have had to take chemistry and go to gym class if we would have gone to the University of Chicago.
And they don't have football.
They don't have football. I don't even know. They call it where fun goes to die.
Apostates.
They left, much like Protestants. Just saying.
Having a good time, quite frankly.
We are all the better for it. But I feel like for me, the Catholic Church is like an institution from which I have been waitlisted. And it's not like, and that's always been this painful thing for me because we started going, my spouse and I, my spouse is trans, we started going to a very accepting, friendly Episcopalian church in DC, Methodist church. I just don't know. They're all Protestant. Every time they just, there's no incense, and I don't.
I like that you picked the two least likely to actually fight each other about it.
I'm like, yeah. But Founder United Methodist, a great institution, leader for social justice in DC, and I remember there were so many moments where I spent time doing the Michigan thing. This isn't how we do this. And so it's been very hard because it just is I feel like the Catholic Church is an institution from which I have been waitlisted, but I nothing, I can't, it's just not the same. And so I think it's been really helpful actually to hear that your changed through writing the book, because I think so many people think that your relationship with faith is like this one, it's like a dog door, it's this very confusing thing that you're in and you're out, and you're in and you're out, and sometimes it's just sort of like you're both. I feel as if I still think of myself as a Catholic culturally. I still feel very Catholic about things. I like rules. I like being told what to do. I like incense. I like everything being done the same way every single time. If you're enthusiastic, I don't like that. That's suspicious. So I think that I find it very comforting to hear that your relationship with your faith is just as complicated as mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, where are the smoke machines? Where are the lasers? Why are there no electric guitars?
The one time, I will tell just a brief story. I don't know if anyone here has ever done, I'm not sure if it's still there. It might be, but New Life Church here in Ann Arbor. I worked at Bursley Dining Hall. I washed dishes all 4 years, and then proceeded to, even now in my household, I'm the person who has to deal with the sink when it's gross, because I'm I've seen things. But there's a really hot guy I worked with, and his name was Ryan, and now he's married and has kids, so it doesn't even matter. He was like, "You want to come to New Life Church with me?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And then we go, and there are multiple guitars.
Praise God.
There are people.
Thank you, Lord.
There are people when there are songs that were written after 1985.
That's right. That's right. The Spirit's still talking.
And they're about how Jesus is your friend, and maybe he'll pick you up from the airport sometime. And people are going
That's him.
And I was like, we should have wiped them out. We should have wiped them all out. We were too nice. Martin Luther, we should have nailed Martin Luther to that door. I was outraged. And Ryan is like, what did you think? And I was like, it was cool.
Was he still as attractive afterward?
No, I'm sorry. That was, no.
Too far.
It's rough. It's rough out here when you're once you get the hit of the one true church, it's really hard to go back.
The one true church, which is in a shopping center, which has a DJ.
Yep. No, I looked also, I think that actually leads to, I know you have a question, but I did want to ask, there are lots of context that you add in, because this is a moment in time. So you talk about She Said Yes and Columbine, obviously talking about 9/11, but the mega church era, was that something that you personally experienced, going to the kind of place where there'd be multiple youth groups, and what was it like to try and draw that out and think about that now?
So when I first started writing, like the first draft was very much a reflection of my own teenage years, which were all at, that's right, a mega church. Where my first church was First Baptist Atlanta, where the pastor was president of the Southern Baptist Convention. My teenage church, also a Baptist mega church, where the pastor was also a president of the Southern Baptist Convention. So like my SBC bona fides, unimpeachable, although they've impeached me by now. So like the first draft was very much like Southern Baptist megachurch, and then I heard something from someone. I said something about like a religious memory or whatever, and they said like, "Oh, that's so Southern Baptist," and I was like, "No, it wasn't." What I just said could have applied to someone not Southern, not Baptist, not Protestant, not American, anyone in a high control religion. And it was like, all right, I gotta move this thing around. So I moved it to Pennsylvania because I wanted a purple state. And like thought about Michigan because y'all have mega churches too. But I settled on Pennsylvania to sort of like, all right, we got to just move away from the whole like pigeonholing it as Southern thing. And I scaled down the megachurchiness to like it starts, the church Isaac wants to join. At the very beginning, he's leaving a megachurch and joining like a mid-sized, vaguely non-denominational church. And then like 9/11 culture war, it explodes into a megachurch. And like then we have like dueling megachurches that are competing. I don't know if no one has mentioned it. I don't know if anyone's noticed it. They're competing to see who has the biggest video board. The biggest Humbletron. Pastor Jack installs one that is 1 inch bigger than the 40-foot wide one.
Go Blue.
But yeah, there is also there's a moment toward the middle during Isaac's wandering in the wilderness, aka he can't see the girl he thinks might be his girlfriend. When he visits the like actual ranking megachurch, and it's the most over the top thing. There's one page in the entire book that's actual like parody and satire. Everything else in here is sorry, but that's real. Isaac's description of the megachurch with the water slides and the bowling alley and just on and on and on.
I was thinking, I'm like, oh, that checks out. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
that's what they're up to then there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The most Osteen-ish church I could imagine. And I'm like, finally, I wrote something too ridiculous for evangelicalism to top. And then that church in Texas with the drummer on the high wire started going viral all the time. And I'm like, I knew I couldn't beat these folks at their own game, but I tried anyway. I did write a Hell House chapter that I don't think they've topped. I whittled it down. There's like 5,000 words of deleted content about the Hell House. It got bad because I tried to top them, and for now I think I have. But it's really pleasant stuff. But yeah, the mega church experience for me was a blessing in disguise, to use a term, because like that. In a lot of ways it's bad. Prosperity gospel is bad. Wasting money on a big smoke machine or big stained glass window, both those things are bad. So I always do this thing. So, lots of denominations are bad, not just the one I grew up in. But the value of the megachurch for me was having a youth group like hundreds of kids strong meant that there was enough weird kids to find each other and then build the critical mass to escape. So like a lot of my lifelong friends were people I met at that megachurch, and we've ended up in many directions. A few of us are still in there, which is, they don't comment on the book. Let's just say that when I post it on Instagram. But like the value of the megachurch, like if you have a 10-kid youth group and you're the weird kid, you're stuck, right? You have no one to come out to if you need to come out about things. You have no one to express doubts or fears. All of you are just bottling it up. But like a big youth group, they're going to lose track of some people. You're going to be sneaking out, and you're going to be doing even more sinister stuff than making out. You're going to be talking about like biblical contradictions. So like I look back on the megachurch, and I'm like, thank God I went to a megachurch, which I don't know. That's the value of it for me.
So I think.
Yeah, so I had a question that I think I'm curious about. Like, I know you work as an editor, Jason, so do I. I was curious about something that has both to do with the writing process and kind of the emotional process of the book. I was struck, it's a book about these kids in this just really deeply abusive system. And it's not bitter, it's not bitter at all. The adults especially are treated tenderly. I think especially the way you write about Isaac's mom it's really something special. And so I was curious, how did you approach the like both as the narrator's voice and as Isaac himself and the various characters that are avatars for everybody who reads it? How did you experience them presenting the story in a way where they're not chiefly bitter? Like, was that something that you cut out? Did you find yourselves writing it and then trying to cut it out? Was it something that was it a choice that you made to just never put it in the first place? How did that go for you?
So the first, let's say like the middle point drafts were like super angry in quote fingers, because there's a lot of like ranting about all the bad stuff about right-wing religion. There's a lot. But it was like, what am I doing? How in character is this? Is this just me dumping some feelings out? Yes. And like, it was angry in a not performative way, but angry in a way that the anger had to be there before I could sort of wipe it aside and find something deeper. And like, things happen in here that, characters are angry about, but the bitterness, like I didn't want, like there could be a really, really good novel about being bitter about all this stuff. There's a ton, honestly. But like, one thing that I found, I got some really good advice from Matthew Pierce. I don't know if anyone knows him. He's like the funniest account on all of Christian Twitter. He read an early version, and that's not sarcastic. It's basically Christian drill. Okay. But he read a version, and he was like, "I know why your villains are like this. You need to show why they're like this." And then I'm like, okay, Pastor Jack, he's doing this culture war stuff to pack people in the building. Is that because he wants money and power? Or is it because he believes that the more people who flood into his building, the more people get saved, the fewer people go to hell? And if preaching like Rush Limbaugh gets them in the building, that's what we're going to do. So like, I tried to show a moment in there when the switch flips for him, when like the fear we hear about early on, that he's afraid he's not living out the Great Commission, that like, he sees that like, hey, I can use this stuff. And then, we can imagine him thinking like, I'll tone it down some point later after we've built like our satellite churches and, all that stuff. And like, I'm not defending him as a person or his actions. He does one of the worst things in the entire book, but like, we know why he's doing it. Like we know his start, we know his origin story, right? Like we know that underlying everything for him is fear. And Eli, Isaac's older brother, like his origin story is the exact same origin story as the story of the novel itself, where like I tried to imagine like, okay, that Wednesday night in youth group when those men had burst in with rifles, what if I had been the kid they grabbed? What if I had been the kid they dragged outside? What if I had like yelled and screamed, "Please don't shoot me. I deny Christ. I renounce my faith. I don't believe in God"? What if I'd said all that while believing that the consequence of saying all that stuff is surrendering my soul? What would that have done to me? So like, I decided, okay, that's the moment that broke Eli, and he has decided to spend the rest of his life making up for that moment. And multiple characters say it. If Eli is right about fire and brimstone hell, then he is the only rational person in the entire world. He's the only one taking it seriously. And like, I do believe it's true that very few people actually believe in eternal conscious torment the way it's taught in a lot of churches and in pop culture. Because if we did, we'd be screaming about it on street corners. So like, I tried to imagine, what if there were a guy who actually believed in eternal conscious torment? Well, he would do the crazy stuff Eli does and says in this book, but we would understand why. I think there are only two characters that Isaac himself can't show any empathy toward. And the thing those two characters have in common is that both of them mistreat Isaac's favorite person. Let's put it that way. But other than those two guys, I wanted to show that everyone in here is the product of a system. At some point, it's on them to choose to reject that system or not, but everyone in here nobody in here invented any of these bad ideas. No one in evangelicalism invented any of these bad ideas. so many stories. The Bible itself is about like humanity versus colonization, love versus empire, like people taking care of each other versus systems that we can either choose to reject or uphold. And like, I just tried to view all of my characters as not a single one of them chose to be born into this. They can only choose whether to leave or not, I guess.
For me, I think, first and foremost, I think I talk a lot about my experiences attempting to become an evangelical Christian. I feel like I never really got there, because I don't think you ever really do. Like, that's the thing with purity. That's the thing with purity spirals. Purity spirals, they're never ending. Like, there's always somebody who's gone deeper and further, and there's always somewhere, like, it's a real danger in politics and in culture. Like, purity spirals are time sucks and money sucks, and they can just be this real place where you can never go far enough or hard enough. And I think that for me, part of it is like my actual Catholicism in my actual life, not my online life, which is different because my evangelicalism largely was online. Like, it was reading Focus on the Family and Brio magazine and Plugged In Online and Boundless Line, and like just being like, oh boy. But my actual Catholicism was filled with like kind, good priests and really good nuns who took no shit whatsoever. They were like the Ursuline sisters, and they were like, we're gonna go protest against the School of the Americas, and we're gonna go fight against sweatshops. And we are like standing up against racism. And we were, I find deep inspiration from the women who, there were 3 nuns who were murdered in El Salvador in 1980. They were young women. There were 2 nuns and 1 laywoman who were murdered by the right-wing regime in El Salvador. And Saint, I believe, Oscar Romero was murdered while performing Mass. And I found real inspiration from them in terms of how I wanted to be. But, and I hope you'll admit this, I've actually found a great deal of surprising amount of hope and optimism because of sports. It sounds surprising, but I think that there are moments. The reason why we watch sports, even as Michigan fans who feel bad all the time, is because we are national champions. I'm getting to it. Because we are desperate for the moment that feels good. My first Michigan game was 2005 Penn State. Yeah. You remember. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're talking about emotional roller coaster. I know. 4th and 1, Chad Henne, Martin Manningham. I don't even need to say anything else. You know that. I think I've been trying to chase that feeling for 19 years. But obviously there's been a lot of ups and downs and all that, but just like the optimism, and I believe optimism is a good thing. I think the online world is like you never change, and doomerism is good. Doomerism isn't good because it means that you just feel bad and you don't change anything. Optimism is because you want to build the steps to get to the good place. And if I get emotional, I'm so sorry, but it's Michigan football and I care about it a lot. If you recall, January 1st of this year, the Rose Bowl. I'm so sorry. When Roman Wilson caught that gas, and it's my scream saver now, because all of us were like, that's coming, like that's a pick 6. Number 13, like the cornerback's directly underneath him. That's a pick 6, that's how this ends, that's how this whole thing ends. Like another season ending traumatically. I am so sorry. Another season ending horribly and traumatically, and another off season of people screaming about how we need to fire everybody or hire everybody or do something. And I'm like, if you look at, I wear a lot of devices and stuff like that, and like my Whoop data, if you know what that is, it tracks like heart rate and strain. According to that, January 1st, 2024 is the hardest day of my life, including the day I ran a half marathon in late May in DC. But like, even now, when I watch footage footage of that Rose Bowl, like there's still a moment where I'm like, well, now it's gonna happen. Like now the pick six is coming. Somehow we're just gonna none of this really happened, but we all know what did happen, which is that Roman Wilson brought that ball down, and then he turned around and got a first down, and it was first and goal, and then for unknown reasons, the entire Alabama defense went that way, and J.J. McCarthy went that way, and then we tied the game, and then Blake Corum scored a touchdown, and we stopped them at fourth and goal, and we won the Rose Bowl, and I genuinely...
That's what I said.
And I know, it's been trying. I'm so glad that you all understand, because it's been difficult to explain to people who aren't Michigan fans, who aren't sports fans.
You're a safe space.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's been so hard to explain to other people that there are moments in your life in which it just feels like being optimistic is dumb. That every goddamn year there's gonna be a TCU that comes out of fucking nowhere. Or it's just gonna be we're just gonna go the 90s, or we're just the entire Lloyd Carr era of just being 10-2 all the time. Okay. I know you do. I know, but we were young and it's different. But it seems, and I think that college football is so hard. I think that people who don't follow the sport don't understand that winning a national championship is increasingly, it seems more difficult every year. It seems like there's only a couple of teams that can do it, and everybody who does it is if you don't do it, you feel like you'll never get there again.
We didn't have the blue chip ratio.
No. It was just a bunch of 3 stars. And I'm sorry. And I know a bunch of you went to the spring game today, and Mikey Sanders still ran past me, and I genuinely was thank you. And I'm so sorry. But I think that for me, that moment when Roman Wilson brought down that catch, where it's not that if he wouldn't have done that, if none of that would have happened, this team would have been great, and I would have been you guys are awesome, but just it was a moment in which optimism won. Optimism won, and so did we. I think that for me, optimism is so good. Optimism is so hard won. It can be so easy to give in, especially if you spend a lot of time on social media. Doomerism seems correct. There's a lot of polling that shows that journalism that it has a more negative slant is perceived to be more accurate. So if you tell people the economy is improving, or this good thing is happening, or people are no, it's not, because it seems bad to hope, and it seems bad to want, because wanting is so hard. I remember, I was a senior in 2008, 2009, and we went 3-9, and when we beat Wisconsin and Minnesota, and God, it sucked. It just seems stupid. Wanting things seems so bad, and being good in the pursuit of good things seems stupid. And optimism seems like the worst thing you could possibly do. And then Roman Wilson brought in that pass, and he turned around. That's what gets me. He brought it down, and he turned around and kept going. And then he got out of bounds, and it was first and goal, and then he caught a touchdown, and then Blake fucking Corum, scored the game-winning touchdown, and then on 4th and 1, their terrible center set low again. And to this day, there are moments where I'm I can't believe it all happened. And I know, we're not talking about football, but we are talking about football, because football is life and life is football. And I think that my development as a member of the human race has been improved by wanting something and believing that something good could happen. And that something good could happen for me and for other people. And I could want that, and it wouldn't always hurt me. It'll hurt me a lot. I know that. I know that. It was nice seeing today, Chris Jenkins be all right, we're gonna win another natty, and I'm I love you, but that would be like, that would be awesome. I'm not gonna say it couldn't happen, but like, wanting good things for yourself and for other people is good. Optimism is good, because sometimes Roman Wilson's gonna bring it in, and you're gonna win.
Amen.
And it's gonna be awesome.
And go Lions!
Oh man. Oh, sorry. I am so sorry though.